Welcome into another episode of the News4JAGs podcast. I'm Jamal St here alongside Justin Barney. Justin, we've made it to this point.
Man, every time I hear Teal the show, every time I hear training camp, somebody asked earlier today about Teal the show starting tonight, and it just kind of hit me again that it's starting tonight. Jaguars rookies report this week.
Yep.
I talked to Evan Ingram at his football camp at Bartram Trail over the weekend, and he said he is ready. He's pumped up.
It's like Christmas Eve.
It's like Christmas Eve because you work to that point. You're training. If it was me, I'm like, Evan, you got any more plans? You going to do anything else in this last time off? And he said, no, it's here. It's now reporting time. It's right around the corner.
Yep.
He was getting ready to go do a camp at his high school back up in the Atlanta, Georgia area. But no, he's ready. I'm sure those veterans, you try to milk that last little bit of time off. I sure would be milking that time off, trying to hold on to that. But no, he is ready.
They're chomping at the bit. Come on, man. It's like somebody asked me. This is the time of year where, there's recent college graduates. We've had shadows coming in. We also have an intern, Kaylee, who's been spending the summer with us from Florida State. She's been great. But one of the shadows asked me, he said, what's your favorite part of the job? Or favorite event that you kind of thing you get to cover with the job? And I was like, that's a good question. I said, I enjoy a lot of the different things. They were like, is it a Jags game? Is it high school football? And I was like, I really like high school football. I said, Jags going to the playoffs and like NFL draft is cool. But I really enjoy training camp. I always have, and I liked training camp when I was just a fan. I mean, I remember high school, elementary school, getting a chance to go to those training camp practices and watch as a kid. And the reason I try and do some of the things I do for training camp practice with the Jags is because that was the coverage when I was in college, sitting in class, and training camp and preseason were rolling. The season was a little bit farther back then, but I was sitting there in class. None of my teachers need to be watching this, but I was sitting there refreshing my timeline, looking for people that were giving play-by-play from camp, because I'm like, who made that catch? Okay, who's this guy? Trying to keep up with it that way. So I really like it. Training camp's a grind. It is a grind. It is hot. It is a lot. But I can understand Evan Ingram's look. It's kind of like Christmas Eve. And this is coming from the guy that Justin told me 2 weeks ago. Training camp starts in 2 weeks. I'm like, huh? What?
It is so crazy how quickly it comes here.
Yeah.
We're mid-July right now. Trevor's got a new contract, baby on the way.
Yep.
You've got guys who are, when we were talking to guys at rookie minicamp and then OTAs, and I'm asking Jarian Jones, hey, what do you got planned? Brevin Easton, what do you got planned? And they were going back home for a little bit, and you're going to see some friends, some family, but pretty much you take a little bit of detox from the grind, but you get right back into it. You're digesting that playbook. You're going over reps, looking on your iPad and seeing what you did in camp. You're ready. You're preparing. It's not take a cruise and vacation time. It's maybe a little bit of a break and detox and step away, but pretty much it's football up until that point. And hearing from Evan, I asked him about going to tight end U and having that experience there, but he said, yeah, you have a little bit of break. I played a lot of golf, but I'm working, I'm grinding, I'm ready for that. So, that's a veteran, Evan Ingram, saying that. So you can imagine the rookies are chomping at the bit to get back in camp, and it is here. It's going to look a lot different than I think. Last year was first year at the MEC.
Ooh, that's right. That's right.
Year two, this is a little bit more.
Joint practices coming.
Yeah, that's completely different having those here. Usually joint practices are elsewhere. It is here. Football season, training camp, while not officially started yet, it's here. It's here.
Look, SEC Media Days to me are always the unofficial start to football season. SEC Media Days kicked off today as we record this, the Monday in Dallas this year, which is just weird, but that's a whole nother conversation. All right, so let's look at this Jaguars roster. A lot of the starting jobs, just like a year ago, are kind of locked up. We know who a lot of them are. But there's one spot that I do want to kind of take a little bit of time to talk about, because I think this is the deepest or most fierce position battle on the team. That's DB. So at defensive back, there's a number of different ways this can kind of go. We can really pencil in maybe two guys as starters for sure. We know Andre Cisco and we know Tyson Campbell.
Right.
Just about every other spot is kind of up in the air for one reason or another.
Right. And the lasting image we had of Tyson last year was struggle,
Sure.
and he's going to be a starter. But
Yeah.
what version of Tyson will we see this year, I think, is a big question. But there's no question he's going to be a starter. Andre Cisco, his arrow is significantly pointing up. So, but other than that, you shed a starter at the opposite of Tyson and Darius Williams, who was a very, very good corner for the Jags for a couple years. You've got a secondary question on who's in that nickel spot. And then, oh, by the way, are you going to start a second-year guy in Antonio Johnson at the other safety spot? So I think there's some serious questions, more so in that secondary that at any other position group on the team, for me at least, I think probably a lot of people, they're questioning the offensive line. But I do think that secondary with the uncertainty of Tyson, the rookie infusion, free agents, I mean, you got Savage there. You just have a lot of question marks at that position.
Whole lot more questions than answers.
Yeah, it's big time.
So here's how I kind of look at it. So we got Tyson Campbell. You kind of pencil him. I think Tyson's going to bounce back. Look, Tyson wasn't healthy last season. I think he'll be just fine in this new defense. And that's the other wrinkle is that they go from a very zone-heavy system to a very man-coverage-heavy system. But we'll just pencil Tyson in as that starter and say, okay, you feel okay about him.
I've seen enough of Tyson.
You've seen enough that you should feel pretty good about
to know
Tyson.
that when he's playing at his best, he is I'm not going to say elite yet, but he's
right on the brink.
He is very, very good. He's that guy who's going to take that next step. So I feel good about Tyson.
And as things stand, as we're recording this, there has not been an extension done for Tyson Campbell. So that means he's going to be playing this season on an expiring contract, which generally, guys tend to show up when they got money on the line.
Josh Allen.
So Tyson's probably going to show up ready to go, knowing that the way he plays this year is a difference of $50 to $60 million.
Andre Cisco as well.
A drastic difference. So now the corner on the other side of him, a little bit more of a debate. So Ronald Darby was signed and penciled into that starting job. They treated him like a starter from the second they signed him. But his contract doesn't scream starter money.
Right.
And Darby's career has been more of a journeyman going from place to place. So he's far from a guy that just inspires a ton of confidence as a starter, even if they do feel like he's okay. They bring in Jarian Jones. Jones has been fantastic. I mean, given I do always tend to caution OTAs and minicamp, take them with a grain of salt. But this coaching staff is very excited about what they've seen from Jarian Jones. So with Jarian Jones and they're kind of pushing Darby for that job is that opposite corner job is far from locked up.
Yeah, I agree. I'm totally with you. And I think when we did our 53-man, I think I even projected Jarian to be started. I think you may have as well.
I did. I think he's going to be your day one starter.
I think so. I think he's a third-round pick.
Yep.
I like Jarian through the pre-draft, saw him a little bit at Florida State. I think he's going to be the guy. I think he's a guy you can grow with.
Yep.
And Darby's kind of been just a mercenary. He's been a drifter. He's been a guy who, he floats here and there, and he's a guy who got not necessarily starter money, but he got paid more than you would probably expect to just kind of be a backup. I think Darby may be the appreciation for him, or the goal for him was to maybe be that bridge starter. But I'm not convinced that Jarian's not going to enter this season as opposite Tyson Campbell. And Darius Williams was good. I wish they could have found a way to keep Darius, just monetary wise. It wasn't good. But I do think Jarian is going to start over Darby, and maybe Darby's a slot guy.
That'll be interesting because that's the next kind of wrinkle to this whole thing. So during free agency, we were out at the Players' Championship. We were out at TPC Sawgrass, and we were talking, and we did a free agents start rolling in. We talk about Darnell Savage. We talk about Ronald Darby. Darnell Savage, we pencil him at safety. He's your Rayshon Jenkins replacement. He's this. And then next thing we know, we go down to the NFL owners meetings, which were maybe the next month, something like that, or later that month, whatever it was. It all kind of off-season blurs together. But Doug Peterson kind of drops it. Hey, look, who's going to be your nickel? We got Savage penciled in there.
Yeah, so that was a shift. What? That was a curveball.
All right. So you bring in this guy, and they pencil in and have decided that Darnell Savage is going to be your nickel. So he's going to be on the field, but you spend like 90% of the time, and 90% of the time you're a nickel anyway.
Right.
So if you pencil in Savage in the slot, that closes the door on possibly a corner, because you drafted Jarian Jones, who played fantastic in the slot for Florida State and probably could play the slot in the NFL, But if the plan is for Savage to be your slot guy, you have to have either one of two things has to happen. Darby has to be fantastic, so good that even though Jarian is good, it forces them to say Darby's your outside guy, but Jarian then has to be so good that they're like, we can't just sit him on the bench. Or Savage has to be bad in the slot. Like those are your two routes. I mean, am I missing one? Is there another path you see?
No, I don't think Jarian is going to be bad. I think
he's going to be good.
I think he's going to be that guy.
But can Darby be good enough that makes them rethink this? Or is Darby just going to be what they expect?
I think you know what you get with Darby.
Yeah.
I don't think he's been at places in his career where he said, man, this guy is a bona fide starting outside corner, bona fide.
Can't keep off the field guy. Yeah.
Absolutely. To me, he's a bridge kind of guy.
Yeah.
I don't think he is going to be here 2 years from now. That bridge was just
shorter than what we thought.
Yeah.
They thought that bridge was going to be, we'll build it. And, it'll be long. The bridge is just long enough that Jarian can have a year or two under his belt and be ready to go.
Now, to me, I look at what they did with the draft after they signed Foyer. So you draft Chad Muma, you draft Devin Lloyd, and you're thinking, okay, Foyer could be a bridge guy. He's got to be too good to keep off the field. He just drafted a first-round linebacker, a linebacker on, third or fourth round, and Chad Muma. Foyer's been too darn good to keep off the field. He just got rewarded with a contract extension. So I look at that as, now obviously Foyer to me was leaned on more to provide that starter impact than a Darby. But I do think that it's similar in that situation where you draft a guy, he's got to be too good to keep off the field, or that free agent's got to be too good to that rookie to pull him off the field. I think that's a little bit of what we're seeing here on more of a tempered scale, because Darby is not getting Foyer kind of money and guarantees, and Jarian was a third-round rookie as opposed to Devin Lloyd, who's in the first round. So I do think there are some similarities there, but I think Jarian is going to be too good to keep him off the field. And I don't think Darby's going to be that good to keep off.
I'm with you. Look, I think Jarian's going to be your outside corner this year, and I do think Savage is going to be your slot. But I think just the dynamic of this defensive back room is so interesting to me. Like, we did a podcast. If you've been listening, you've heard my stance on this. We talked about players with the most on the line, or the most that they could lose this season, most pressure this season is what we were doing. And I said Antonio Johnson. And my reason for picking Antonio wasn't because of things that were in his control. It's because of the things that are out of his control. Like if Savage goes out there and stinks in the slot, and then they have to go with a corner at slot, then all of a sudden they just brought in Savage. Savage is going to start at safety.
Right.
So then Antonio's back off the field. So not only does Antonio have to worry about his play and being good enough that they feel confident for him to be on the field as a starter, for Savage to be in the slot, but you got to worry about Savage being good enough in the slot for them to feel confident with you on the field as a starter at safety. And then you also have to worry about, can Darby or Jarian or both of them play so well that they say, man, we can't keep both of these guys off the field, or one of these guys off the field. Like, there's so many wrinkles that Antonio could all of a sudden look up and they're like, sorry, Antonio, you're the odd man out. You're going to have to be depth. You're not a starter the way we
So you're talking potentially starter, or potentially you may not make the 53 man because you're a 6th-round pick, right? You're talking the end of one end of the extreme to the other.
The pendulum could go. It's so far. And I think Antonio Johnson's a fantastic player. I think he's going to be a starter on this team.
3 picks as a rookie, 6th-rounder?
Yeah. I think he's going to be a starter on this team. I think he's going to be a really good player for years to come for the Jaguars. But it's just so interesting the way the dominoes could work for this defensive back room, because of, I guess, the way they're planning on doing this thing with this almost 3-safety look to go with the 2 corners. And you got one of those corners that we're all kind of starting to, I think the Jarian Jones hype train's getting there to where just about everybody's saying that 3rd-round pick's probably starting day one, which is far from a guarantee when he's a 3rd-round pick.
Yeah, you know what situation I've thought about over and over? Imagine Jacksonville did not take Brenton Strange.
Okay.
Imagine Jacksonville drafted Brian Branch, your guy.
Man,
we would be having an entirely different conversation. At this point. Second round. Oh, man.
Entirely different conversation. Woo! But that also means you wouldn't have Antonio Johnson.
That's true.
So, hey.
Brian or Antonio? I know who I'm taking. No disrespect, Antonio.
Fair enough. But so this defensive back room, I think that's going to be one of the most watched position battles when it comes to training. Not one of the. It is the most watched because there's just so many different kind of layers to it. So many different guys that are fighting. I mean, even if you look at the safety room, you want to go farther down. The cornerback and safety rooms are both far from locked up. I mean, the Jaguars keep drafting young corners, so that means they don't love the young corners that they have. And then the safety room, you got guys like Daniel Thomas, Andrew Wingard. They're kind of glue guys at this point in their careers. They're holding on. They're glue guys. They play special teams, but with a new defensive coordinator, there ain't no loyalty in this thing anymore. So,
what could help them though is just how much time they spend in that. I mean, you're talking nickel defense. Yeah. Probably between 70 and 85, 90% of the time. Yeah. So that's going to – I mean, you're going to have those fresh legs in on third down where Dewey's going to be in there. Daniel Thomas is going to be in there.
Being where?
In there on third – I mean –
on defense? No.
On defense.
No.
Of course.
No.
You don't think –
if everybody's healthy –
If everybody's healthy.
But
those guys are going to get some meaningful reps.
On special teams.
They're going to be in there on defense too.
If they are playing – something is going. There are already 3 safeties above them on the depth chart. If something happens and Andrew Wingard is like your third down guy, and this is, I mean, look, Dewey,
it's happened before.
It has happened before. Joe Cullen got fired over it. I mean, I know everybody. It was always the Jags. He's fun. He's great. He is fantastic on special teams and in a reserve role, like pinch starter, fine. But they're under zero circumstances should they be going into games thinking on third down for some fresh legs. Here comes Andrew Wingard to bail us out and get off the field.
I'm just saying Daniel is back. Not. Dewey's back.
Absolutely not.
I think those guys will get some reps
on special teams.
I think they'll get some reps on. I think they'll get some reps on some fresh legs down.
Then Ryan Nielsen's going to be on the hot seat.
Don't count them out. They like those guys.
I'm just going to tell you.
They like those guys.
He hasn't seen them in pads yet. That there's no loyalty. I'll look, like I said, Dewey and DT have done great things on special teams here. And Andrew's given them some good, pinch hitting where he goes in for an injured player. But on third downs, there should not be a package where they look to the sideline and say, you know what, Antonio, you're tired. Come on, take this third. Like this isn't dealing with defensive linemen. Like they're not rotating. No, absolutely not. If he's tired enough that he comes off the field for Andrew Wingard, don't come back. Just don't come back. What do you know? Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I've got faith in those guys as pinch hitters.
I don't. So I'm just keeping it a buck. If you're that tired, no, absolutely not.
You're stopping the game for a minute.
You just time out.
You stopping the game? TV timeout.
Who's running these substitutions? If I'm sitting in the meeting room and I don't know what you want, call a package, Thor, Marvel, whatever you want to call it, and we're gonna sub you guys out because it's third and long and we want to give you a break. Absolutely not. Stop the meeting, restart. Let's go back to the drawing board. It's first down again. What can we do different? No.
Oh man, I've got faith in this.
All right, he's got faith. I don't. We'll see how this all works out. It's going to be interesting. Definitely going to be interesting to see those guys try and earn the trust of this new defensive coaching staff, and maybe they will.
And that's what you got a new defensive staff in here. Guys like Daniel Thomas, I mean, guys are Antonio Johnson, another guy, defensive staff, new defensive staff. Antonio played well last year in training camp, and it was
the hamstring.
He had an injury,
I stand on this to this day. If he doesn't pull that hamstring in preseason, he opens the season as the Jaguars nickel. We said it at the end, and I kept waiting for it. We kept waiting for him to get on the field, and it never quite happened. And they didn't want to put him on injured reserve because that would shut him down for at least the 4 weeks. They kept him on the active roster. He was getting close. It was that nagging hamstring injury. If he is healthy, week 1, he is the Jaguars nickel from day 1.
I don't disagree.
No question.
I don't disagree.
I still stand on that.
He had a great camp.
He would have been the guy. Trey Herndon would have been backing him up. It just didn't happen that way. The hamstring shut him down. He didn't come back till London.
Yeah, and he had 3 picks.
And then found a way to get out on the field. And it's tough. And the one thing I know somebody's out there like, well, why didn't they just make the switch? It's tough when you're winning games. Because, I mean, keep in mind, they've kind of gotten back on track and or we're trying to get back on track and get rolling. And then all of a sudden you look up and you're 8-3. It's tough to make a switch like that for a veteran guy, for a rookie fifth or sixth? Sixth.
Yep.
A rookie pick, a rookie day 3 pick, and you say, "Hey Trey, I know we're 8-3, but that's tough."
Yep.
And they just didn't do it. So ultimately, Antonio got his shot eventually, and right now it worked out. He's penciled in as a starter. I'm an Antonio Johnson fan. I think he's fantastic. If you get a chance to go out and watch training camp, I don't know if they're going to run it the same way they ran it last year. But if they do, during some of those passing drills where the DBs were matching up against wide receivers, they would bring Antonio Johnson over just to cover Evan Ingram, just to see him get reps trying to cover Evan Ingram. And I talked to Evan about it, and straight up he was like, what they're doing, the two-way go they're giving me, it's not even fair. Like, a DB can't cover me on that because there's no offensive line there. So basically he can just go wherever. He can go left, right. He's not worrying about linebackers, D linemen. He's just going run. And he's like, he was impressed with what Antonio was able to do and how he was able to mirror him, which says a lot when it's a drill that leans towards the offense heavily, and the offensive guy's like, no, this dude's legit. And this is a rookie day 3 pick that they're bringing over just to cover your your tight end that was getting ready to go have a 1,000-yard season.
Right.
So we'll see. We'll see what Antonio has in the tank for year 2. All right. With that said, since we talked about Antonio, I guess that kind of sets this up. What player are you the most hopeful for, has the most pressure on, or, I mean, has the most to prove when training camp starts next week? If you had to pick one guy, most to prove, most on the line, young player, old player, anybody up and down the roster, I mean, maybe not Trevor, but player with the most to prove on the roster.
There are so many guys, so many ways I could go with this, and I'm thinking about it. Tyson would be a good one, but I'm going to say Anton Harrison. The offensive line was terrible last year. I know Anton was poorly graded, first-round pick. There's no guy of merit on that offensive line. ESPN's done the top at the positions over the last week and a half, and interior offensive linemen and tackles were ranked. No tackles at all were ranked among Jags. Honorable mention, top 10, receiving votes, nothing. Only guy on the interior offensive line who was worth a mention at all, Brandon Sheriff, and he received votes. Doesn't say how many, but there are no guy on that offensive line who you say, man, this guy's a force. He's an enforcer. There's going to be a lot of pressure. There's going to be a lot of scrutiny on that offensive line this season. Anton's a second-year guy. He has got a lot to prove. And I know people raved about Anton, threw him in the fire last year, but statistically he had a terrible rookie season. He was one of the worst graded tackles in the league. And I think if you're Anton Harrison going into year 2, there's nothing much expected nationally from this offensive line. I think you're a young guy, a first-round pick. If you can come in, I know Anton, he's pleasant. You talk about food, and he has a chance. Yeah, food take time. You have a chance to really set the narrative for years to come on that offensive line. Cam's not going to be here long-term. Brandon Sheriff's not going to be here long-term. Ezra Cleveland, just a guy. Walker Little still in the mix. Mitch Morris in the mix. Luke Fortner, kind of just guys. If you're Anton Harrison, you got that first-round pedigree.
Sure.
You could make your case at right tackle. You could say you can make the team have enough faith in you to move you to left tackle when Cam's time is up, whenever that is. I think he's got a lot of pressure on him because you could, become face of that offensive line. Sure. You could reinvent that offensive line, reinvent the faith in that offensive line, which hasn't been there. So everything is set up for Anton Harrison to kind of take charge, be that new face on that offensive line. He's got a great personality, endear him to the community, and, kind of install faith in that offensive line, which was an awful, abysmal, terrible unit last season. Anton's got he's got a lot to prove for me.
I kind of like that one. Look, I thought Anton had a solid season. He got better as the year went on. He was dealing with that shoulder injury, had surgery after the season. And he went through the gauntlet of pass rushers. I mean, week after week, from Chris Joneses of the world, just guys. And to whether the Jaguars did it on purpose or not, they left that man on an island against dudes. I mean, he was on a one-on-one Chris Jones and got whipped. I mean, it happens. And the question is whether or not he learned from that. And the idea was that he was getting better as the season went on because of some of those opportunities, even if they didn't go the Jaguars' way initially. So we'll see if there's some growth there as he gets healthy and gets out on the field for training camp. I think Anton's going to be fine. So I kind of played with this one for mine a little bit.
It's
tough.
I thought,
it's a little tough. I thought about maybe a guy like Tyler Lacey. You mentioned Tyson Campbell. I thought Andre Sisco. There's a number of guys, but ultimately I kind of landed on, I could have gone like Tank Bigsby or Brenton Strain, but I landed on the offensive line too.
Okay.
But I went with a different guy, Walker Little.
Okay, good.
So the reason I said walk, right, is Walker Little has never gotten maybe a true shake as a starter. And the odds of him getting a true shake as like a starter this season, it probably ain't happening.
Unless they move on from Cam.
Unless they move on from Cam during camp. But I just don't see it at this point. But Walker is in the last year of his contract. So is Cam Robinson. At some point, and I said this on Sunday Sports Zone just yesterday, at some point, the Jaguars are going to look in the mirror and say, we have to make a decision for the future. Who is our future left tackle? Is it Cam Robinson, who has been that left tackle for a long time? Do they think he is the future? Is he are they gonna re him up for another contract?
No, definitely not.
Is it Walker Little? Walker Little is younger, but he's never started a full season because he's never gotten that full shake because Cam's always kind of lurking in the background coming back. Or is it Anton Harrison? There's this decision where there's this opportunity for Walker Little to take the bull by the horns, get a solid starting contract from the Jaguars here and be penciled in as the future of that left tackle, and all he has to do is play his cards right, wait his opportunity, and get paid for it.
Yep.
Or it can go a completely different way, and he could be in free agent, maybe he could be an under-recruited free agent who goes into a team where he's back in the situation where he's in now as a backup. He was a second-round pick, so some team will probably give him a fair shake, at least a position battle. But the odds of you walking into a starting job when you were an unheralded starter are normally slim.
Right.
So I think there's a lot on the line for Walker Little to handle this stuff the correct way and make them look at it and say, even if Cam's our starter right now, since Doug Peterson's been here, Cam has not started a full football season.
Right.
So Doug Peterson's never seen Cam Robinson start a full football season. At some point, more than likely, Walker's going to get his number called.
I agree.
And when he does, he has to find a way to be in the mental and physical headspace and physical space where he needs to be to perform. So that way Trent and Doug look at it at the end of the season and say, that's our left tackle. That's the guy. We got to keep him in the building. And realistically, it shouldn't be a break-the-bank contract because he doesn't have a ton of starting experience, but let's re-sign him and keep him there. Or
he's going to get paid. He's going to get paid next year. You look at this, young left tackle.
He doesn't have much experience.
Look what Ezra Cleveland got as an interior guy.
That's true.
And
Ezra had more starting experience.
He did, but he was an interior guy. He was injured a good bit last year. He was a late-round pick instead of Walker being Walker's a second-round pick. There were rumors last year that the Cowboys wanted Walker Little.
Right.
But during camp. So, the tread is not off Cam Robinson's tires. The offensive line can play till they're 90. Trent Williams is, how old is Trent Williams? And he's regarded as the number one offensive offensive tackle in the league. So he can play forever. Cam is definitely not done from a shelf life standpoint. He may be done in Jacksonville because of what he's going to cost the team. I don't think Jacksonville is highly enamored with Cam Robinson just from the availability issues, being injuries, being suspensions. Well, he's left some on the table, and he's not been an exceptionally great tackle either.
That's the thing, is the price tag that's associated with average. Is he worth the price tag that you're going to pay because he's a veteran guy with a ton of starting experience and they gave him a boatload of money?
It's another second-round pick as well.
A boatload of money. Is he worth what you're going to give up to keep him when you know what you get is statistically average?
Depends on what you're going to pay. Let's say you retain a Walker Little. Let's say you're deciding on, and we're just throwing hypothetical numbers out here. Let's say you know what you're getting with Cam Robinson, veteran. He's gonna be an above average guy in the run game, an average guy in the pass game, and he's gonna cost you $28 million a year.
Yep.
let's say Walker Little, another second-round pick. He's going into year 5 at this point.
Yep.
And, yeah, he doesn't have that starting experience. The upside is there. He's shown flickers and flashes. He's going to cost you $17 million a year.
Sure.
What are you going to do there in that situation? Is the veteran side of Cam, who's going to get you above average and average in these two departments, worth $10 million a year more than Walker? I don't think it is.
No.
I don't think it is.
If the price tags are the same, I go with the younger guy.
Yeah, I agree.
Even if you told me both of them were 20 or 25 or whatever it is per, I go with the younger guy because at the end of the day, as of right now, Walker has shown us very few.
Yes.
He doesn't have a long injury history.
Right.
Availability has not been a crazy problem. He had injuries last year because they tried to play him at guard.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a guard. He's a tackle. He's been a tackle his entire life. Cam has availability issues at this point.
Yes.
So if I'm going to invest in a guy, I'm going to invest in the guy that I think has more tread on the tires, has more availability left in him.
Mm-hmm.
And a guy who I think hasn't reached his peak because ultimately they haven't given him a shake because, well, we got Cam at left. Hey, Walker, can you play right? Well, Cam's coming back. Can you play guard? And those sorts of things. So you haven't really just – I say give – and I wouldn't give Walker some 4 or 5 year monster deal. I think realistically you give him – and if I was his agent, I'd be looking for – that Laramie Tunsil style deal, that 2 or 3 year kind of deal, solid money, but basically I'm going to re-up after I got a couple of years of starting experience under my belt and come and say, now I showed you, show me the money.
Right. I mean, the Ezra Cleveland deal is a good example because he didn't get top of the market money at all. And he has more starting experience, and he was banged up last year as well. He's not a guy that Jags really invested in. They didn't draft him. They traded for him, gave up very little to get him. They're hoping for more, but his deal ended up looking like a pretty good value in terms of when that market kind of got rolling and some of these interior guys were getting jack. I mean, they were getting some bread.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's something that tackles are paid better than guards.
Yeah.
But maybe that's something like you're alluding to where he signs a 2-year deal. Proves himself and that. But I do think that tackle money for Walker Little next year, if he hits the market, is going to be worth more than what Jacksonville's willing to pay.
Probably. So that's something that we'll have to keep an eye on. But I think there's a lot of pressure on Walker to prove himself. Even
totally
without
agree.
I mean, he's basically competing for a starting job. It just may not be to start this season.
Totally agree.
So that it's a strange spot, but it's going to be one that's worth watching. Training camp starts next week. Hey, we got our first Teal the Show of the year coming your way tonight, 11:20 right here on Channel 4. Well, we're recording this on Monday. If you listen to it on Tuesday, we're every Monday and Friday night at 11:20 on Channel 4. If you miss it on TV, you can catch it online on YouTube over on News4JAGs.com. Look for Teal the Show. We normally put a longer version there, so some of the things that maybe don't make it on TV, sometimes we'll give you a little bit more Jags talk with Frank Frangie and I Mondays and Friday nights to keep.
And
you
this
up to date
goes
with
all the way through.
This is
the
the beginning,
season.
and
this is the beginning of the run.
We won't stop till 2025 at some point.
The marathon
So,
begins.
That's it. So you're gonna get tired of hearing us talk about the Jags at this point, but it's here, and that's the fun part. Look, I enjoy the off season. There's a lot of talk. There's a lot of guessing, but the games,
the real
everybody
stuff
loves
is
it 'cause of
better.
the
And
games.
for we say this all the time internally. The worst time to be in our field is this dead period of time where you're scraping at the bits and
there's
nothing going on.
There's nothing going on. If you ever turn on Channel 4 and you look at a sportscast and there's like nothing from Jacksonville in it, trust me, I'm having a bad day. I'm not enjoying myself. If I'm scraping the bear ball, I'm not like trying to throw any sports under the bus here. But if I'm talking about the Tour de frickin' France in the middle of the race and it ain't even over yet, trust me, it is not a good day.
Hey, riding bikes is fun. Your mom rides bikes.
She does.
I love riding bikes.
Yeah, and nothing wrong with riding bikes. But if I'm talking about the middle of the Tour de France, the middle of the race, like a random stage, I had nothing else to fill the show. Nothing. It was a bad day. The end of the Tour de France, different.
That's true.
In the beginning, we can talk. Unless it's a funny video like a rider getting hit with a sign or something.
That is true.
Then that's an exception.
But we're not going to have Tour de France highlights on.
We're going to have
starting
basically nothing but Jags, and then high school football will get thrown in there, and then college football will get thrown in there. But it is cranking up. Make sure you check News4JAGs.com. Click on that sports page. Training camp starts next week on Wednesday. You'll want to check it every day. We'll have plenty of Jaguars content coming your way, one-on-one interviews. We'll have a training camp notebook that rolls out and some other stuff that will roll out every day. You'll be able to find more Jags videos and content than you can anywhere else. So at this point, just make it a daily kind of visit. Go over there and check out all the stuff. Hey, thanks for hanging out with us today on the News4JAGs podcast, and we will see you next time.